I discovered my wife's affair on my son's iPad. I'll get straight to the point, but I 29M and my wife 29F have been together for 13 years since college but have been married for 5 years. We have a 9-year-old son, and 2 years ago, my wife bought him an iPad. Little did I know that device would cause the end of my marriage. My wife has never been overly attached or secretive about her messages when I'm around. We've shared our passwords as a sign of trust, so I never had any reason to suspect her of cheating. My son asked me to buy him Minecraft, so I said sure. So I went onto the App Store, and in the Today tab, there was a section called iPad Essentials, and Snapchat was there. I thought it was strange for an 8-year-old to have Snapchat. I asked my son why he has Snapchat, but he didn't know what Snapchat is. Maybe he accidentally downloaded it. Curiosity struck me, so I opened Snapchat, and I think you can guess the rest. My wife made a Snapchat account, which is 1.5 years old, on my son's iPad, and we added one guy, who we will call Jay. Regrettably, I lack concrete evidence of their explicit communication. All I have is Jay on my son's iPad, plus the fact that Snapchat's messages and images vanish within 24 hours. Contemplating the notion of impersonating my wife and reaching out to Jay on Snapchat briefly crossed my mind. However, I swiftly discarded the idea, wary that my wife might have Jay listed in her contacts on her iPhone. Such an action could potentially raise suspicion about why she would be simultaneously messaging him from 2 separate devices. Despite this, I opted to leave the Snapchat app and remove any traces that I found when I opened it. Moving forward, I downloaded Minecraft onto my son's iPad. Following that, I took a moment to peruse my wife's Instagram, searching for any traces of connection with Jay asshole, but found none. However, a different story unfolded on Facebook, where I uncovered that she indeed followed him. Thankfully, his profile was publicly accessible, affording me a glimpse into his life and how it could assist my nuclear option. Notably, his online presence featured images of a wife and 2 children. Furthermore, it appeared that his primary hobby revolved around hiking, as evident from the catalog of pictures captured amidst his various hikes. In case I wanted to go nuclear, I found his wife and his parents' Facebook profiles. Should I go completely nuclear and be a complete jerk and try to ruin my wife and Jay's lives by exposing them to everyone? I studied sociology and psychology for A-levels years ago, and I don't want to create a toxic environment for my son. I felt more anger, hence why I want to take a nuclear approach, but I need to plan ahead. I decided to view my son's screen time activity. Upon review, I discovered that, on average, she spent approximately 20 minutes per day on Snapchat, according to data available up to March 4th. However, it's worth noting that screen time statistics may not be 100% accurate. My friend recommended that I acquire the services of a private investigator, and thus, I followed through with his suggestion. Although it entails a significant financial investment, I am hopeful that the investigator will provide vital evidence to prove my wife's infidelity. I intend to present them to legal counsel upon initiating divorce proceedings. Also, it's worth noting that the UK justice system doesn't really care about infidelity when it comes to divorce. However, I want primary custody of my son, so adultery will be considered. Unfortunately, I haven't had the time to go through my wife's phone. In preparation, I've drafted 2 plans that I could use against my wife. Plan 1: going fully nuclear, showing evidence to everyone of my wife's infidelity, even showing proof of Jay's infidelity to his family. Regardless of which plan I choose, I will tell Jay's wife the truth, as he deserves to know what kind of homewrecker her husband is, and serve divorce papers right in her face. Plan 2: threatening to go nuclear. With hopefully the vital evidence provided by a private investigator, I can threaten my wife with the evidence I've obtained. I will persuade her to not contest the divorce and let me have full or primary custody. Otherwise, I will go to scorched earth. Now on to the minor points, which I will discuss briefly. Firstly, I want primary custody for my son simply because my wife works more hours than me. As her job is way more demanding than mine, and I take care of my son more, I believe he will benefit from staying with me. I also never intended on taking my child away from his mother, but nonetheless, she caused the family to collapse by failing to keep her legs closed. Secondly, my friend suggested that she could be having an affair with a co-worker, so I've arranged a meeting with her colleague, whom I consider a friend. Thirdly, I've concluded I'm going to take the less nuclear approach, but with a few minor adjustments. Finally and most importantly, I've reached out to legal counsel, and while I wanted to wait for evidence from the private investigator, I needed to be a couple steps ahead of my wife, as she could be filing for divorce herself. My lawyer also emphasized the importance of patience to me. I also asked him if I could file for divorce based on adultery committed by my wife, and he said yes, so I'm holding on to hope that the private investigator is worth it. I will talk about why I'm not a fan of therapy, and the simple answer is that my therapist didn't care for me at all. During adulthood and childhood, My father cheated on my mother multiple times. Somehow they are still together to this day. Of course, therapy and psychology have advanced since I last had a session, but I just deeply remember explaining my issues to my therapist. And she replied in a monotone anything else and ended the session. I feel like I'm traumatized by these words. Now on to how life has been for me. Honestly, I've been struggling to hide my frustration and disgust. Yesterday we had intimacy and intercourse because I've been accepting her demands. She knows I would never turn down intimacy, and I genuinely felt sick. I have no evidence that my wife's or Jay's affair turned physical, but the mere concept of my wife sleeping with another man frightens me. She questioned my peculiar motives, but I just joked that my Johnny isn't working, and she laughed. We left it at that. But I genuinely felt humiliated. My wife could be laughing about this situation with Jay, and I'm just struggling to accept what life has become. I've also been overthinking, what if my son isn't mine? What if this affair has been going on for quite some time? And I've been too oblivious to recognize the red flags because I firmly held on to the idea that my marriage had no flaws. I cursed my uncle after he hit me. My aunt used to be married to a guy called John, and they had my cousin Abby. John was a pretty awful guy. I knew that even at a young age. Our whole family hated him. He was drunk, belligerent, had a temper, all the usual. My aunt was blind to it. One day, when I was 8, I was over at their house with Abby, and my aunt was supposed to be watching us. I can't remember the circumstances of why I was there, but my mom insists they must have been desperate for childcare. Anyway, my aunt was supposed to be there, and John was supposed to be at work, but she gave me her phone just in case of emergencies. John came home at some point during the day and went straight to bed. Me and Abby were playing in her room, and my aunt was downstairs. I guess we were making too much noise because John woke up and totally lost his mind. He stormed into the room, screaming at us. It all happened pretty quickly, but from what I remember, he shoved Abby to the ground and kicked her. Not hard. He just sort of pushed her with his foot while she tried to get up. I ran and hid behind the bed, but he came and grabbed me. He dragged me over to the middle of the room and slapped me. Again, not that hard, but enough to make me cry because I'd never been hit before. My scream brought my aunt into the room, and she was pretty scared. I remember her being really upset and John defending himself, saying we needed to learn to be quiet and that it was her fault for not watching us while he was sleeping. Eventually he left the room, and my aunt was comforting me. She begged me not to tell my mom. She offered me money and ice cream to stay quiet. I was so scared that I agreed. Right after we had ice cream downstairs, I went to the bathroom and called my dad and told him what happened. 20 minutes later, my dad shows up and demands to see John. I won't describe in too much detail what happened, but John ended up in the hospital after my dad was done with him. It was made clear that John was no longer welcome in the family and that my aunt wouldn't receive any more financial support if she stayed with him. So, she left. John's life kind of fell apart. He never worked very much and mostly lived off my aunt, who was living off my parents and grandparents. He had nowhere to live, inconsistent income, was couch surfing for a while, and his drinking got worse. He has been in and out of Abby's life ever since. Abby has hated it since the incident. She blames me for her family's falling apart. I think it's kind of fair enough that she keeps her distance from me. I was a large part of why things happened the way they did, and that hurts her. The problem is that she never shuts up about it. Every family event is just her complaining and sniping that she doesn't have a dad anymore because of me. The rest of the family does tell her to knock it off, but she always cries, and that just ends the conversation. She gets worse about it when John stops contacting her for a few months. All this being said, we had a big Easter dinner at my grandparents' house. Abby was again complaining that she hadn't seen her dad in months because he was away working across the country. It was sad that at his age he had to take these kinds of jobs because he lost his family over some whining brat me who had never apologized. I won't lie, I was a little hungover, had just gotten off a plane, and was not at my most gracious. But I had just had enough. Before anyone else could tell her to knock it off, I said I wasn't the least bit sorry about what happened to her dad. I said he was an abusive person. Just because she was okay with him hitting children doesn't mean anyone else was. And if he had had 2 brain cells that weren't constantly fighting, maybe he'd have been smart enough to keep his unhinged behavior focused on the people who would put up with it. Well, that didn't go down well. Abby completely broke down, trashed her plate and glass, called me a psychopath, and left. My mother, stepdad, grandma, and aunt think I went overboard. Grandpa and stepbrother are on my side. I discovered my girlfriend's true nature after moving in together. I 25M moved in with my girlfriend 24F of 4 years, 3 weeks ago. She chose the place, and although her name is on the lease, I paid half of the deposit and paid the first month of rent as she couldn't afford it. I also paid the first month of bills. She works part-time and has some savings. She used to furnish the place according to her taste. Despite my objections, I felt she overspent, and the money could have been better spent on other things. She had a few friends over on Monday when I came home. She had ordered food, and as I normally come home from work at 5, she was surprised to see me there an hour earlier. They were a little drunk, and one of her friends made strange comments, which I thought nothing of due to the alcohol as I went to the bathroom to shower. When I came out of the shower, her other friends and sister were quoting me poetry that I had written to my girlfriend, and she was quite handsy. I found it odd and asked her where she had heard that. She says we just read your love letters to her before watching a movie. My girlfriend was laughing with them. Her sister made a remark about how she wanted me to do her the way I do her sister because she had never felt that way. I was furious, but due to her drunkenness, I thought it impossible to talk to her. I left for my mother's house. On Tuesday, she called me 17 times, but I ignored it. She also sent me many texts, wanting to know why I wasn't home. On Wednesday, I told her in person how hurt I was by her sharing my intimate letters with her friends and for oversharing what we do in private. She said relax. It was a joke, and nobody got hurt. She said the girls were impressed with me, and that is why they got a little handsy. She said once I gave her the letters, they were hers to share with whomever she pleased. So I told her that I am my own person and can make the decision to not share more of myself with her. Today she came to my mother's, apologizing. She wanted me to come back and talk it out with her. I told her no, and that we were through. She wouldn't leave, so I drove to my father's place, where I am now. She kept texting me and telling me that I should be ashamed of myself for leaving her like that. She got her friends and sister to apologize to me, and they told me to quit playing games and go home now that they had apologized. I told them I was home and that, as my name was not on the lease and I wasn't respected as an equal in her home, I no longer wanted to be with her. Luckily for me, I hadn't moved most of my stuff there. She kept calling and texting, and I blocked her. She then made a mutual male friend of ours contact me and tell me that I was being a bitch about it, so I blocked him too. Then his girlfriend texted me and told me not to take things out of proportion. I am almost certain I did the right thing, but maybe I should talk it out with her before cutting all contact. After talking it out with my family and friends, it seems it's best to not continue my relationship. I haven't contacted her directly, but I went with my brother and my friend while she went to visit her parents. It was a pre-booked trip. I collected my things and gave my brother the key to give to her Friday evening. She wouldn't take it from him, as she wanted me to return it. My brother told her there was zero chance of that happening because of the TikTok post she had on her account. This post went into more details about what was in the letters from me, including her mentioning my sister by name and her miscarriages. This forced my sister to tell my mother about it, even though it brought up a lot of trauma for her. At the moment, my sister is not talking to me because she feels I shouldn't have shared that with anyone. I agree. It was a violation on my part, even though I was looking for emotional support from my girlfriend. My ex took down the post in hopes of getting me to meet with her. When she realized that wouldn't happen, she put up another one, telling her side of the story. There were several parts, and in them she was looking for the letters to show her followers, but I knew where she kept them and took them while I went to collect my stuff. I burned all of them. I won't be writing letters to any new romantic partners anytime soon. Her sister has been to my mother's a few times trying to get me to help out with the rent. According to my ex's reasoning, if I hadn't agreed to pay for the rent, she wouldn't have overspent on setting up her home the way she wanted. Even if she sells the stuff, she won't get the original price for it, so she feels it's my fault for making her lose money. She did contact the landlord. She filmed for her TikTok viewers while she was on the phone to him, and he denied her breaking the lease without penalties. She has to pay for the remainder of the month. I asked her for my deposit through my friend while he was on the loudspeaker so I could hear her side without having to speak. I knew full well I wouldn't get my part, but at least he tried. She called him a lot of names. Then I called him back and apologized because she wanted him to tell me to call her so she could straighten out the misunderstanding and we could get back together. She has now taken down all the posts about me. I don't know if she will upload them again once it dawns on her that we are through. She called my brother again to make me speak to her so she could explain, and he met her a few hours ago. He finally gave her the key, as she was told either she could take it or we would return it to the landlord. He picked up a call from her an hour after he dropped off the keys. She wanted to talk to me and to forgive her, as she had seen how she made a mistake and that it wouldn't happen again. She wanted me to return the love letters, but my brother told her they were burned. She had a go at him, so my brother cut her off. She called back, more apologetic, and said what she had to do to make me go back. He asked her if she would be okay to pay us. She said she wouldn't be okay with it. I guess the double standard has completely turned me off, as she told my brother that if you receive something through a romantic relationship, then it stays between four eyes. It's not that she doesn't understand that what she did is wrong. It's that she expects me to be okay with it, as in her mind, her feelings matter more in the relationship. She also thinks that me being taller and bigger than her shouldn't have made her feel threatened by her friends or sisters, as I was not really in harm's way. He then blocked her as she called him several times over and left him crying messages and then some angry messages. Her sister left an angry message with the friend that helped me with asking for the deposit, and she threatened him. I am getting a new number, as I can do so with my current payment plan. I am going forward from this and hoping that I make better decisions in the future.